Welcome back to 101 East. It's 8:30 a.m. in Beijing, and remarkably, the rush hour traffic on the Jingguo Road is flowing smoothly. That's because the government has made severe restrictions on the number of private cars that can use the roads during the Olympics. Now, for the commuters, that's great news. But for those who drive for a living, like Jiao Rongchang, it's a real problem. Here's his story in his own words.
我叫姜荣强，今年34岁。
My name is Jiao Rongqiang. I'm 34 years old. I work as a truck driver.
那肯定出行也不方便。
Olympics has brought about inconvenience. I can't drive, I have no income. I just stay at home.
现在从7月1号
Since July 1st, vehicles with yellow labels are not allowed on the road. Green labeled ones are allowed on alternate days.
它是达不到O3标准。
If a vehicle can't reach a certain standard for clean gas emission, it has a yellow label. Otherwise, it's green. My truck was bought a long time ago. It wasn't manufactured to meet green label standards. I was earning about $30 a day. Now, not a cent. My vehicle isn't allowed on the road until September 20th. There's not much else I can do. Factories around here have stopped operation to keep the air clean. Their workers and I are in the same boat. We should be compensated with a 3-month minimum income. Now there's nothing except a 3-month road tax exemption. I'm not even on the road. Of course I shouldn't be paying tax. Olympics is a historical event. It's a great honor for us to host it. But on a personal level, I have a wife, a kid, and parents to feed. Our sacrifice is worth it only for the country, not for me.
Professor Sun, before the break, you were saying that the perception of the West about China is wrong. Explain a little bit more about why.
I think this misunderstanding, sometimes even prejudice, arise out of lack of understanding, lack of direct experience with China. And there is another reason, which is the deep-rooted Western ideology that is always there, playing a role of, influencing the Western journalist's perspective on China. So anything that is different from the Western model of political system, Western way of life, is wrong. That's the logic.
Professor Shah, do you agree with that?
I don't agree. I think because the foreign press, they might have some detailed description of China's situation, but still they can tell us a part of the truth.
Which is
because I think the official propaganda made them misunderstood China. I think they doubt, they suspect this kind of the official saying. So they try hard to find out by themselves, but still they can get less resources. Nowadays we can get some message from the internet, from the ordinary people. When they get access to internet, they can express their ideas, their information, message, and their feelings about some events.
I would agree with Professor Shah that the Western media might tell some truth, part of the truth. Now the problem with them is that they focus only on the problems, and sometimes made up problems, and sometimes exaggerated problems, and sometimes distorted picture of China. So the problem is that they have not provided a balanced picture of China.
I think that's a very important issue that Chinese officials, they won't like to talk about. It's the political issues, political reform. That's a fundamental issue in China. We have 30 years of the economic reform, but if you don't have the political reform, we can hardly go on further in the next 30 years.
It is difficult not to focus on some of the problems when the problems are reasonably large. We mentioned the internet for a second. The Chinese government had suggested that there would be free internet access for the media for these Olympics. It now turns out that that is not the case. issues like that are important issues, and they do say something about the attitude of the government, do they not?
Any government has the right to block information that propagates violence, that propagates separation of the nation, that propagates, religious fanaticism. So I think the United States would not allow bin Laden to propagate its information on a website. Mm-hmm. The British government would not allow separatists in Northern Ireland to advocate violence. So what's wrong with China to do that?
Professor Shah, I mean, there has been a significant amount of opening, even if there are still restrictions. Is this not progress?
I think the Chinese citizens, they like to have the Olympic Games in China to show that during the 30 years reform, we have promoted in a lot of the aspects of the Chinese society, economic life and social life. But still, there are some aspects that we are not fulfilled, and we have a long way to go.
I'd like to draw their attention to the improvements that we have been making in the areas of free press, of free exchange of opinions, and free worship, and all kinds of all those freedoms. So I know there are problems in all these areas, and there are still lots of things to do to improve the situation here. Now, criticisms based on evidence, based on facts, and also for good intention are welcome. The problem is the kind of condescending, contemptuous attitude. That's what I don't like.
Professor Shah, you spoke about rights. You spoke about an increasing demand for political freedoms. Having said that, it's been interesting in the past couple of years to see a nationalism also coming into China. You could see it in the earthquake. You could see it in the reaction to foreign coverage of Tibet. A certain pulling together. Was that significant, do you think?
When you have the danger of the foreign invasion, nationalism is good to resist the invasion. But most of the time, I think it might be kind of the protectionism of the trade, and also exaggeration of the national image, and over protection of the Chinese, the weak points. All those things are bad things. So I don't like nationalism in general.
Do you like the degree of nationalism that exists, or do you think there's too much of it now?
Too much.
Too much. How about you?
Well, again, I like you to see the double standard here. When the Americans rallied together after the September 11, they call it patriotism. When Chinese people are, getting together to celebrate their, such a big event, now they call it nationalism. And
I apologize. I didn't mean to be pejorative with that. I just meant
demonstrate
the unity there.
Nationalism certainly is a negative term. Of course, I see that the possibility of negative effects of too much nationalism when it gets, radical, when it gets very narrow-minded.
Carrefour, when they try to smash, McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's called nationalism.
That's destructive nationalism.
Okay. Well, it's been an interesting few years as we've built up towards this Olympic Games. I'd like to think about what might happen once this is over. If I may begin with you for a final word, where does China go from here? Will the experience of this entire Olympic adventure be a positive one, and if so, how?
Well, you see the infrastructure and the road construction are getting much improved through this event. But after that, I wish that in most of the major cities of China and also the rural areas, they also can have the similar infrastructure and road construction, all those things, improvement, not only in Beijing.
Professor Sun.
I hope one of the most important heritages of this big event, this Olympic Games, would be the increased mutual understanding between China and the rest parts of the world, for one thing. For another, I hope and I believe China will maintain its opening up policy with more confidence toward the rest parts of the world, and take effective measures to solve all kinds of problems like pollution, like corruption, like political scandals, all kinds of problems. We have problems, but I have confidence that we can solve those problems, and we will solve those problems not for the sake of a few Western governments or a few Western dissidents or a few so-called human rights groups. We solve those problems for the sake of the Chinese people.
Thank you very much indeed. There we'll have to leave it, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And that's all from this edition of 101 East in Beijing. See you again next time.